Ladies and gentlemen, wishing you a peaceful night full of rest and relaxation. Tonight we journey deep into the velvety darkness of ancient Nubia, where moonlight rests on mud brick homes and the Nile hums its ageless lullaby. You stand barefoot in a dusty courtyard, stars above so dense they resemble crushed salt scattered across obsidian silk. A woman steps past you, her linen shift glowing faintly in the light of an oil lamp, and you wonder what it means to get ready for bed in a world without electricity, pillows stuffed with feathers, or central air. Spoiler, you probably wouldn't survive this heat without complaint. We're about to spend an entire night, perhaps many nights, in ancient Nubia, tracing what women wore to sleep. But we won't just study clothes. We'll breathe in the air, press our palms against cool clay walls, and peek into rituals both ordinary and sacred. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. I'd love to know where you're listening from and what time it is for you right now. Drop it in the comments if you're still awake. Now, dim the lights and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You begin your descent into Nubian sleepwear with the simplest element: setting. Before we slip into nightgowns, wraps, or beads, you have to understand what Nubian nightfall really felt like. Picture a climate where daytime temperatures easily soared above 40 degrees Celsius. But once the sun vanished behind low hills, a subtle chill whispered across the desert. The shift from blazing heat to nocturnal calm wasn't just a relief. It was an event. The air itself felt different. You might stand outside, palms resting on a worn ceramic water jug, as neighbors quietly wound down from their day. Women's living quarters were usually enclosed, with separate spaces for sleep and storage. The beds, forget fluffy duvets. A typical Nubian bed might have been a raised clay platform, or even a flat mat made from woven palm fibers. If you were of a wealthier class, say, a wife of a village elder or trader, you might have enjoyed a wooden frame with leather straps across it, designed for airflow. A soft animal skin might top it, but nothing excessive. Ancient Nubians weren't into extravagance, except occasionally when it came to jewelry. We'll get to that. The walls of the sleeping quarters were made of sun-dried mud brick, sometimes plastered with whitewash to reflect moonlight inside. A few would hang amulets or painted deities over their resting space, especially female household gods linked to fertility and protection. Historians still argue whether these decorations were purely symbolic or actively believed to ward off spirits that might roam at night. You listen to the Nile just beyond the reeds. In the distance, someone's goat makes a tired grunt, and a woman sings a lullaby to a child in a language no longer spoken. You smell smoke from a nearly burned-out cooking fire mixed with something sweet, perhaps tamarind or wild dates. The night folds itself around you slowly, like being wrapped in fine linen. Speaking of linen, that fabric was the pride of the region. Nubian women were experts at spinning, dyeing, and tailoring breathable garments suited for brutal heat and sudden chill. While the Egyptians preferred stiffer weaves and structured garments, Nubians often leaned into looser, more practical shapes, perfect for sleeping. Their nightwear wasn't an afterthought. It was an extension of their relationship with the land. One quirky discovery from burial sites shows women sometimes tucked tiny sachets of herbs or crushed flowers into their sleeping wraps, perhaps as an insect repellent, or maybe just to carry a sense of comfort into their dreams. Think of it like slipping lavender under your pillow. Only you harvested it yourself. miles from the nearest marketplace. You lie down now in this imagined Nubian room. Your body still radiates heat from the day. You shift against a smooth mat, maybe roll to your side as your linen garment sticks lightly to the small of your back. It's sleeveless, tied at one shoulder with a dyed strip of cloth. Ochre if you were from the lower village. Deep indigo if you could afford a bit more flair. It's important to remember, by the way, that ancient Nubia isn't one fixed moment in time. The region's cultures spanned thousands of years and several empires, from Kerma to Napata to Meroe. While we'll gently zigzag between periods tonight, we'll mostly focus on common threads, pun fully intended, that stayed consistent across generations. As your eyes adjust to the dim room, you notice a few other figures curled nearby. Maybe an elderly aunt humming gently in her sleep, or a daughter with braided hair flopped across her face. Privacy wasn't exactly a thing. Most homes slept communally, and women often shared bed spaces with children or extended relatives. There's something oddly calming about all this, isn't there? The simplicity, the groundedness, the lack of screens and deadlines, and alarm clocks. The rhythm of Nubian nights moved at the pace of crickets and river wind, not phone notifications. You might not survive a day here, but the night? You could definitely drift off to this one. A final thought before sleep overtakes you tonight. Historians still argue about just how formal sleepwear was in ancient Nubia. Did women own specific outfits just for bed? Or did they simply repurpose day wraps, worn thin and softened over time? No one knows for sure, but the evidence suggests at least some thought and care went into what they wore. Because even under the stars, surrounded by silence and dust, there was beauty. The air cools further now, brushing past your face like the trailing edge of a linen scarf. As you remain reclined on the reed mat, or perhaps on that low clay platform, you begin to notice more of your surroundings. The texture of the floor beneath you, for instance, is not exactly smooth. It's earthen, of course, but carefully swept, almost polished by generations of bare feet. In ancient Nubia, the floor wasn't just something you walked on. It was a thermal tool. Clay floors absorbed the brutal heat of the day and released it slowly at night, offering a kind of primitive floor heating in reverse. You shift slightly, feeling that gentle warmth beneath you and think, this is no palace. But it works. Now, take a look around the room. Or, more accurately, the corner of the household space that becomes a bedroom after sundown. There might be a leather satchel hanging from a peg, a ceramic jug half filled with cool water, and a simple stool for sitting or kneeling. That's about it. The aesthetic leans heavily toward minimalism, though not by choice. Yet even in simplicity, there's ingenuity. You see, ancient Nubian homes, especially those in smaller towns or rural settlements, were designed with cooling in mind. Roofs were often flat and used at night to sleep under the stars when the interior got too stifling. If you were lucky, your roof was accessible and protected with short parapets, so you didn't roll off mid-dream. That was a genuine risk, and probably a story shared between mothers and sleepy children. Don't kick in your sleep like your uncle. He nearly woke up in the Nile. Inside the home, the sleeping area might be partially curtained, or simply understood as the corner where we rest. Privacy? Almost non-existent. Mothers slept with children, younger women often with cousins or siblings. A visiting relative might curl up at your feet, unbothered. The sense of shared space extended to breath, body heat, and yes, snoring. Still, there were ways to carve out a tiny sanctuary. Women would often bring personal items to bed, Not full-blown nightstands, of course, but maybe a woven pouch containing amulets, a lock of a child's hair, or a lump of resin incense for a morning offering. A palm fiber fan might lie nearby, not because it helped during sleep, who fans themselves in unconsciousness, but for the sticky dawns when air stood still like a grumpy ghost. Let's talk sleeping positions, since you're already imagining yourself stretched across a woven mat. Most slept on their sides or curled into a slight fetal shape, not because it was symbolic, but because it made the most sense on a firm surface. Some oral traditions passed down through Nubian communities mention the use of small headrests carved from wood or clay, basically ancient travel pillows shaped like an open hourglass. Whether they were truly comfortable is up for debate. Historians still argue whether these headrests were used regularly, or saved for ceremonial use, or for corpses. You take a deep breath now, and the room smells of a mixture of things: lingering wood smoke, dried sweat, perhaps even the dusty sweetness of crushed millet from dinner. There's no air freshener, no lavender spray misted from a sleek bottle, but it's not unpleasant. It's grounding, real. We can't forget that sleep, in this context, had a more fluid relationship with the night. Women would rise multiple times, sometimes to check on babies, other times to stir coals, or even step outside to urinate under the stars. It wasn't a single 8-hour block. It was a sequence of drifting in and out, like the Nile's gentle eddies outside. One quirky tidbit from excavation sites: clay figurines of women, possibly goddesses or fertility symbols, have been found beneath floors or near sleeping areas. Whether they served as protective charms, fertility wishes, or simply decorative items remains unclear. But the implication is clear. Sleep wasn't just about rest. It was sacred in its own quiet way. You hear something now, just outside the door. It's the shuffling of feet, perhaps the soft metallic clink of bangles being removed. A neighbor. Maybe she's just finished brushing her teeth with a fibrous twig dipped in salt or charcoal. You hear a hushed voice offer a short prayer or wish to the stars, then quiet again. As your body relaxes further, you notice another Nubian feature: the subtle layering of sleep gear. Women didn't necessarily use blankets as we know them, but thin woven cloths, dyed or left plain, might be drawn lightly across the torso or legs to deter insects or hold in a whisper of warmth. If the family could afford it, mosquito netting fashioned from tightly woven reed fiber might hang above the bed area, swaying like a ghost's shawl in the moonlight. A luxury, to be sure, but one that hinted at a knowledge of local dangers. And those dangers were real. Sandflies, mosquitoes, even the occasional snake that slithered in through a cracked wall or an open door. No one wore combat boots to bed, but keeping your feet wrapped or tucking a low cloth around the legs wasn't just for comfort. It was strategic. There's something poetic about the way it all fits together, isn't there? How the materials of the land, clay, palm, linen, leather, formed a kind of unified bedtime philosophy. You used what was around you, what made sense. No fluff, no fast fashion, just comfort that had been worn smooth by centuries of quiet routine. And yes, some nights were uncomfortable, too hot, too buggy, too crowded. But somehow, sleep still came. It always came. Sometimes accompanied by dreams of crocodile gods or markets or ancestral voices. Other times it came in pieces, 20 minutes here, an hour there, but always with the knowledge that another night would follow. Another chance to wrap yourself in linen, curl on a hard floor, and let the river's song wash over you once again. You're still lying on that mat, legs stretched out, one arm bent under your head like a makeshift cushion. And now it's time to turn our attention to something deceptively simple. The garment itself. A piece of cloth, yes, but in ancient Nubia, what a woman wore to bed was more than mere fabric. It was a mood, a message, and sometimes even a secret. Let's imagine her, shall we? She moves quietly through the final chores of the evening, rinsing her hands, smoothing the top of a jar, checking the fire. Her sleepwear is already on, a linen shift so light it could disappear in a breeze. It falls to mid-thigh or just below the knee, depending on the woman and the era. The weave? Loose, breathable. Woven by hand, probably by her or someone in her family. And if you look closer, you'd notice it's not entirely opaque. The fabric lets through just enough moonlight to blur the shape of her legs beneath it. Modesty, it turns out, was a layered and fluid idea. Linen was the star of the Nubian textile scene. Derived from the flax plant, it was not only lightweight, but also moisture-wicking, a necessity in a land that never really cooled down. You can almost feel it on your skin now, crisp at first, softening with the heat of your body, adapting as you do. The best linens were reserved for elites or passed down as heirlooms, but even humbler households had access to a basic flax wrap or tunic. And yes, this was considered luxury, believe it or not. Cotton wouldn't appear in the region until much later, and wool? Far too warm for Nubian nights. In fact, wool was sometimes considered ritually impure in certain religious contexts. So, linen it was, all day, all night. But don't let the simplicity fool you. These sleep garments could be anything from utilitarian to subtly sensual. Some were dyed with natural pigments, soft browns from acacia, muted reds from madder root, and pale blues from the elusive indigo. Indigo especially held cultural weight. In some cases, it was associated with spiritual protection. Historians still argue whether certain pigments also signified age, status, or marital availability. Some suspect the deeper the indigo, the more desirable the sleeper. Stitching varied too. Some shifts were sleeveless, tied over one shoulder with a knotted strip of linen. Others had wide neck holes that slipped over the head like a poncho. Embroidered details? Rare but not unheard of, usually reserved for special occasions or inherited pieces. You wouldn't waste delicate needlework on a throwaway tunic, but you might want a tiny protective symbol, an eye, a zigzag for water, or the glyph of a goddess, stitched discreetly along the hem, just in case. One particularly fringed discovery involved bronze or bone fasteners attached to shoulder seams, little clips or pins that held a shift in place. Were they fashion or function? Scholars aren't sure. They could have allowed a garment to be opened or adjusted easily, perhaps even removed in sleep. Or maybe they were decorative, early bling for bedtime. And here's something mildly scandalous. Some evidence suggests not all women wore a full garment to bed. In certain seasons or locations, especially in the southernmost stretches of Nubia, women might simply sleep in a wrap, a long strip of cloth wound around the waist and tucked under itself like a skirt. Topless? Possibly. Practical? Very. Especially when sleeping with babies, cooking coals nearby, or unpredictable animal visitors. You wouldn't want a neckline dragging through last night's lentils. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. Let's go back to that shift. the one worn by most women across the Nile Valley. It's more than just sleepwear. It's a second skin. You notice how it moves as she does, never clinging, never tugging, just flowing, shifting with her breath, her spine, her turn onto one hip as she settles into bed. The effect is both intimate and effortlessly cool, literally. You might be wondering, was there ever a trend in sleepwear? Like, did one village wear wraparounds while another went full toga? The answer is yes and no. Nubia wasn't one static culture. It evolved through centuries of trade, conquest, and regional identity. Some regions adopted Egyptian elements, pleated linen, elaborate dyeing techniques, decorative collars. Others held tight to older traditions. What united them was function. Whatever you wore had to keep you alive through the heat and let your skin breathe as the desert exhaled at night. And of course, social class played a huge role. A noblewoman's nightwear might be woven finer, dyed deeper, maybe even perfumed. A servant's thicker, coarser, and probably doubled as her daywear the next morning. But even then, there was pride in presentation. A poor woman might wash and dry her one tunic by firelight, then sleep in nothing but a waist wrap while it hung to dry. You can picture her now, sitting beside a clay lamp, arms folded across her chest, waiting for the hiss of damp linen turning dry. Oh, and let's not forget the footwear, or lack thereof. Nubians rarely wore shoes inside, and certainly not to bed. Sandals made of leather or woven reeds were left by the door. You'll hear more about head coverings later, but down below, toes out. Always. Here's a fun little theory. Some researchers suggest that certain linen tunics were cut intentionally short for sleep, just long enough to preserve modesty when seated, but loose enough to allow cooling airflow during slumber. Others think they were simply hand-me-downs, worn thin over years, eventually demoted to nighttime use. Like that threadbare t-shirt you can't bring yourself to throw away. So as you lie here, beneath a mosquito net, or perhaps just the open stars, you begin to understand. The garment wasn't just fabric. It was memory. It was climate. It was necessity, wrapped in elegance. You close your eyes, feel the linen on your body, and know this was made to sleep in. The scent of warm sand and faint charcoal still lingers as you shift beneath your linen wrap, the air now still and thick with nighttime quiet. But before you truly settle in, we turn to a question you probably didn't expect. How exactly did Nubian women prepare themselves for bed in a place with no running water, no minty toothpaste, no shower gel promising cucumber sunrise? The answer? With rituals as earthy as the land itself, and with a surprising dose of luxury. You rise from your mat, bare feet brushing the smooth clay floor. It's time for your nightly routine. Step 1. Cleansing. No soap, no tub, but definitely water. Nubian women took hygiene seriously, even if the process looked very different from what you're used to. Picture a shallow ceramic basin filled with water carried up from the river earlier that evening or drawn from a nearby well. A smaller gourd scoop sits beside it. You dip your hands, splash your face, and use a smooth stone or fibrous cloth to scrub gently along the arms and neck. Some women added a pinch of ash or powdered clay for exfoliation. You thought modern face masks were advanced? Try volcanic silt filtered through a linen sieve. There's evidence, too, of scented water being used for this pre-sleep cleanse. Bits of myrrh, crushed lemongrass, or Even ground sandalwood bark may have been soaked in jars during the day and added to rinse water at night. Nothing overpowering, just the faintest trace of fragrance that lingered like a whisper against the skin. Next comes oiling. You reach for a small clay pot with a rounded lip, just big enough to scoop from with 2 fingers. Inside, a blend of moringa oil and pulverized frankincense resin. Maybe a bit of sesame oil, too, if your household could afford it. This concoction does more than moisturize. It keeps bugs away and soothes sun-chapped skin. You rub it into your arms, your legs, your collarbones. The scent is warm, nutty, and just a little bit spicy. And now, a fringe tidbit you probably didn't see coming. Some women oiled not just their skin, but their scalp before bed. It was believed that massaging fragrant oils into the head helped maintain thick, healthy hair and protect it against headaches caused by dry desert winds. Whether that's science or superstition is still debated. Historians still argue whether the oiling of hair was a cosmetic routine or part of larger spiritual practices tied to feminine energy. Once clean and glistening, a final optional flourish: ochre. Women in certain regions of Nubia lightly dusted their arms, cheeks, or even thighs with powdered red ochre, not unlike a natural blush. It was believed to carry protective and fertile properties, and besides, even in sleep, it never hurt to look just a little luminous. One odd but delightful find from burial sites near Meroe: tiny carved ivory tools, resembling dull knives or spatulas, believed to be applicators for oils or pigments. Were these women's sleep kits? Ancient Nubian vanity sets? Possibly. They suggest a level of nighttime self-care you might not expect from 2,000 years ago. The air is a little cooler now, and your skin feels slick in a satisfying way, like you've been dipped in moonlight. You reach for a fresh linen wrap, one reserved just for sleep, and knot it loosely under your bust. You sit for a moment, letting the oil sink in, the scent wrap around your nostrils, your breathing slow. Then comes hair. Nubian women were meticulous about their hair, and bedtime required a bit of effort. Long hair might be braided into thin plaits or wrapped in a cloth turban to prevent tangling. Shorter cuts were less common but easier to maintain. In either case, the goal was simple: wake up with your crown intact. One early traveler's account from the region mentions women who sleep with heads as still as statues, supposedly to keep their elaborate braids perfect overnight. Whether that's poetic exaggeration or an actual skill, you can imagine the pride woven into each strand. Teeth? They had a method for that too. Wooden chew sticks, often from the Salvadora persica tree, also known as the toothbrush tree, were rubbed along the gums to clean and freshen the mouth. Some sticks were infused with crushed mint or charcoal. You chew one end to fray the fibers, spit into a clay basin, and leave the stick by the bedside. Bamboo charcoal toothpaste suddenly feels very derivative, doesn't it? And then finally comes silence. The entire routine might have taken 15, maybe 20 minutes. No mirrors, no glowing bathroom tiles, just instinct, muscle memory, and generations of passed down practice. It wasn't about beauty in the way modern products promise. It was about comfort, protection, ritual, and presence. And that, in its own way, is beautiful. One thing to note here: while men also cleaned up before bed, their routines were simpler. A rinse, maybe some oil, and then immediate collapse. But women held on to ritual like it was a thread tying them to their mothers. their daughters, their gods. You lie back down now, skin slick and fragrant, hair tucked under a cloth wrap. Somewhere nearby, another woman murmurs a soft evening prayer, maybe to Isis, maybe to a local river deity whose name is long lost to history. The night welcomes you. You smell of frankincense and dust and wild resin, and for the first time in a long time, your skin thanks you. The room grows quieter still. You lie back once more, now freshly oiled and wrapped, and hear only the soft creak of woven palm walls, adjusting to the breeze. But wait. There's a faint clinking nearby, a delicate jingling, subtle but distinct. It's not the wind. It's her jewelry. That Nubian woman slipping into sleep beside you hasn't taken it off. Not all of it, anyway. Why? Because in ancient Nubia, even bedtime was a moment of style, status, and, just possibly, spiritual safeguarding. You might assume jewelry was something removed at night. In your world, maybe you place your rings in a dish, unclasp a necklace, pop off earrings with a sigh. But here, in this world, some women didn't just not remove their jewelry, they chose to sleep in it. Sometimes for fashion, sometimes for symbolism, and occasionally because it simply never left the body to begin with. Let's start with anklets. If you glance under the linen wrap of your bedmate, you'll likely spot a pair of them. Thin loops of copper or bronze, or even cowrie shells strung on woven fiber. Anklets weren't necessarily flashy. They might have been hidden beneath fabric, softly clinking as the wearer adjusted in her sleep. But they served more than an aesthetic purpose. Some historians believe anklets were associated with fertility and sensuality, meant to emphasize a woman's movements, even when she moved only in dreams. Bracelets, too, made regular appearances in sleepwear. A woman might wear a copper cuff or beaded band tight enough that removing it would be a hassle, and so she wouldn't. In some cases, it was just easier to keep it on. In others, a bracelet held spiritual meaning. A carved charm might ward off illness or attract favorable dreams. One particularly charming theory posits that sleep jewelry helped protect the soul during its nighttime wanderings, just in case it got lost among the stars and needed something shiny to find its way home. Earrings? Trickier. Some were heavy and elaborate, definitely not sleep-friendly. But others were smaller, simple hoops, worn continuously. Not removing them before bed might have been entirely practical. Or maybe removing them just never occurred to anyone. After all, this wasn't a society of lockboxes and alarm clocks. If you didn't need to take something off, why would you? And then, there's the waist bead. Now this is where things get interesting. Waist beads, thin, colorful strings of beads worn around the midsection, are still worn in parts of Africa today, and their origin traces back millennia. In Nubia, they were popular among women for both decorative and symbolic reasons. Some were tied permanently. Others were adjusted seasonally. They marked womanhood, fertility, sometimes sensuality, and almost always personal identity. And here's the thing, they were usually worn under clothing. No one saw them, except perhaps a lover, a midwife, or the woman herself. So when a Nubian woman slipped beneath a linen cloth at night, those beads came with her. They pressed against her skin as she curled into herself. They warmed with her body. They weren't removed, not unless they broke or unless she chose to let them go. There's something intimate, almost sacred, about jewelry worn only for yourself. Not to be seen, but to be felt. You shift again on your mat, imagining the faint chime of cowrie shells near your hip, the soft press of metal against your wrist. These are not distractions from sleep. They are part of sleep. Comforting, anchoring, a reminder of your body and the life you carry within it. One fringe tidbit for you. In a few excavated Nubian graves, archaeologists found women buried with their jewelry still in place. Anklets, earrings, beads, all arranged exactly as they would have been worn in life. This raises an intriguing question. Were they simply buried as they slept? Or was this a conscious choice to dress them not in ceremonial attire, but in their most peaceful, most personal state? Historians still argue whether these were true burial outfits or just nightwear carried into the afterlife. Now, let's not forget the women who did remove their jewelry. There were certainly some. Perhaps a nose ring unhooked and stored in a small reed pouch. Maybe an elaborate necklace untied and placed near the sleeping area. In wealthier homes, clay dishes or animal-shaped storage boxes have been found, possibly early versions of a jewelry tray. It depended on the woman, her routine, her preferences, and the jewelry itself. There's a sense here, not of rigid rules, but of deeply personal rhythm. If something felt right to wear through the night, you wore it. If it interfered with dreams or sleep or stillness, you took it off. And because sleep was viewed not just as rest, but as a gentle, spiritual passage each evening, whatever you wore had meaning, including the quietest shell pressed against your thigh. You look across the room now. Another woman adjusts herself in the dark. Her bracelets chime softly. Her ankle shifts, and a cowrie clinks against another. These sounds don't disturb the night. They're part of it, like crickets, like river water lapping wood. So yes, Nubian women wore jewelry to bed, not always, not universally, but often enough to leave traces across centuries. Traces that sparkle just faintly now, here in your memory, as the night deepens and your eyes close again. You shift in your sleep half awake, your linen wrap cool against freshly oiled skin. The room still hums with stillness, but a new scent stirs the air. Sweet, smoky, and faintly citrusy. It's not from a nearby fire or cooking pot. No, this scent is deliberate. It's rising from a shallow dish, tucked discreetly near the doorway, or from a tiny ball of smoldering resin nestled in a carved stone burner. It's perfume, not sprayed or spritzed, of course, but released slowly into the night, through oils, incense, and aromatic pastes, carefully prepared as the sun dipped below the hills. You see, in ancient Nubia, sleep was a sensory event. Scent played a quiet but vital role. Women didn't just wind down, they steeped themselves in calm. That began, for many, with perfume. Imagine her now, seated cross-legged near the sleeping mat, dipping her finger into a small pot of scented salve. The base is moringa oil again, mild, nutty, and stable in the heat. Into that, she's crushed petals from desert flowers, shavings of cinnamon bark, or powdered myrrh. Maybe she adds resin from the acacia tree or a few grains of dried orange peel. The mixture is pressed and left in the sun where it thickens into a soft, fragrant balm. She dabs it lightly behind her ears, along her collarbone, and at the pulse points on her wrists. No alcohol, no synthetic fixatives, just oils that cling to the skin and warm as she lies down, releasing their subtle magic. This isn't luxury in the modern sense. It's not opulence. It's something gentler, more personal. A way to mark the transition from day to night, from survival to softness. Some women perfume their hair too, by adding a few drops of oil to their scalp wraps, or by braiding fragrant herbs like sweet basil or mint into the plates themselves. One theory suggests women sometimes kept tiny clay jars of scent tucked near their beds, like a bedtime talisman, whether for comfort, attraction, or divine favor. Historians still argue whether these nighttime perfumes were primarily spiritual, sensual, or medicinal. And then there was incense. Incense played a major role in Nubian nighttime rituals, especially in wealthier homes or sacred households. The most commonly used materials were frankincense and myrrh, resins imported from further south or traded via camel caravan across desert routes. Burned slowly in hand-carved burners, these scents didn't overpower. They hovered. They lingered. They sweetened the air like background music for your breath. One particularly delightful fringe detail. Some ancient Nubian incense burners were shaped like animals. Frogs, fish, lions. The open mouths served as vents, releasing curls of smoke that slithered lazily toward the ceiling. Whether you believe in magic or not, it's hard to deny the charm of falling asleep with smoke trailing from a ceramic frog's mouth. But the function of scent wasn't only for pleasure. Certain oils and incense were believed to ward off pests, spirits, and illness. Lemongrass and basil repelled mosquitoes. Myrrh calmed the nervous system, or so it was believed. Some women used a blend of camphor and cedar bark to line their bedding, hoping to deter scorpions or ants. The line between cosmetic and medicinal was, as always, delightfully blurred. Let's not forget what these scents meant socially, too. To wear perfume at night, especially one not shared with the whole family, might be a private gesture for a husband, for oneself, for the gods. Some inscriptions suggest perfumed women were considered more fertile, more prosperous, or more favored by deities. Others hint that a woman's scent was a kind of signature, like a fingerprint, known only to those who truly knew her. There's a quiet beauty in that, isn't there? In the idea that your scent as you fall asleep tells your story, that it's part of the wind down, the welcome, the act of dreaming. As you inhale now, you notice the faintest trace of floral warmth. Jasmine, perhaps, or something earthier. You imagine a palm-sized perfume jar near your mat. It's carved from alabaster, smoothed by years of use. There's a thumbprint in its lid, not yours, but hers, left there long ago. Even the poor found ways to smell pleasant. Dried herbs might be crushed and mixed with oil, or the ash of fragrant wood rubbed along the skin. Not everyone had a collection of imported myrrh or stone burners shaped like frogs, but the instinct to sleep in a cloud of comfort was universal. Some women perfumed their garments instead of their bodies. Linen shifts were soaked in lightly scented water and left to dry in the sun, absorbing the scent like memory. When you slipped one on, it carried the day's warmth and the air's perfume into your dreams, a humble luxury, and one that needed no gold. As your mind drifts further towards sleep, you start to feel what they must have felt, the comfort of repetition, of ritual, oil, scent, wrap, rest. The night folds in on itself like fabric, and you, oiled and perfumed, become part of it. Tomorrow, there may be markets, births, deaths, floods, visitors. But tonight? Tonight smells like sandalwood and stillness. You stir again, just a little. The scent of sandalwood lingers softly near your nose, but now there's something else. A rhythmic sound, faint, almost percussive. At first you think it's your own heartbeat, amplified by sleep. But no, it's something outside. A low, repetitive thump, the lull of a mortar and pestle. Someone's finishing their nighttime chores. In ancient Nubia, sleep didn't descend all at once like a modern light switch. The night was a slow, tapering process, full of staggered rituals and last-minute tasks. And one of the most common sounds to fall asleep to? The muted thump of someone grinding grain late into the evening. You wouldn't be surprised to find a woman crouched just outside her home, knees tucked beneath her, grinding sorghum or millet by the light of a flickering oil lamp. Maybe she's preparing the next day's breakfast. Maybe she's simply finishing a task she couldn't get to earlier, because daylight hours were for gathering water, chasing children, weaving mats, and trading at the market. Nighttime for many women was the only true quiet time. This is when you realize not everyone was asleep when you were. In households with multiple generations, the rhythm of sleep was layered. Infants might wake at intervals, crying into the dark. Grandmothers might sit up, wide-eyed from dreams or back pain, murmuring to themselves. And some women, those who preferred solitude, might wait until everyone else had drifted off before allowing themselves to rest. It wasn't uncommon for women to perform small, personal rituals after others had fallen asleep. Fixing a braid, whispering a prayer, mending a torn wrap by the glow of a lamp, threading the needle in near darkness. These quiet, invisible acts of care gave shape to the night. The house might be silent, but it was never truly still. You shift slightly on your mat. The reed fibers creak beneath you. A breeze slips in through a window slit, nudging a curtain that's really just a repurposed shawl. You feel a draft along your oiled collarbone. Somewhere in the next room, or perhaps just behind a partition of hanging mats, a mother soothes a child with a soft song. The words are old. You don't understand them, but the melody is clear. Patience, calm, surrender. And you remember, sleep in Nubia wasn't a solitary act. It was communal. Houses were shared. Spaces overlapped. Women didn't retreat into individual bedrooms with closed doors and white noise machines. They slept near cousins, children, elders. Body heat was shared. Nightmares were heard and responded to. You might awaken at midnight and find your sister using the chamber pot 2 feet away, or your niece twitching in her sleep, dreaming of jackals or mangoes. One lovely fringe detail. Some homes had dedicated sleeping mats for guests, rolled up during the day and laid out only at night. These weren't tucked away in linen closets. They were stacked near the wall, visible but out of the way. Hospitality mattered. Even if you had almost nothing, you made room for a tired traveler, especially if she was another woman. It's no surprise, then, that bedtime conversations lingered long after bodies had stilled. Women talked, softly, slowly, until they drifted off. About the day's gossip, about a new dye they wanted to try, about a husband who'd come home late smelling of fermented palm wine. These weren't formal pillow talks. They were murmurs in the dark, half-sentences, shared laughs, a final chuckle before the air grew quiet. Historians still argue whether such nighttime chatter was encouraged or frowned upon. Some texts suggest the gods preferred silence after dusk. Others hint that women's speech held unique spiritual weight at night, almost like weaving stories in the dark to keep bad spirits at bay. You wonder then, what would they think of your world? A world of podcasts, meditation apps, digital alarm clocks. Would they find it strange to fall asleep alone, behind a locked door, to a voice from a speaker? Or would they marvel at your freedom to choose silence? A final detail, then, before you doze again. Sometimes, in rare but notable moments, Nubian women would sing themselves to sleep. Not a performance, not even a lullaby. Just a line or two, repeated until the brain unknotted. Something passed down from a grandmother. Something hummed into a pillow. Something forgotten by dawn. You feel that rhythm now, not a song exactly, but a cadence. The mortar and pestle have gone quiet. The baby has stilled. The oil lamp flickers and dies. And in that velvety darkness shared with every other breathing soul in the household, your body finally lets go. You're not alone. You never were. You wake briefly, not fully, but just enough to notice the stillness has deepened. The stars outside are dimmer, tucked behind a gauzy veil of early morning mist. Somewhere a bird stirs, not singing yet, just shifting feathers. The night isn't over, but it's reached its deepest point. That strange, sacred moment when sleep is thickest, and even dreams seem to hold their breath. But as you lie there, let's take a moment to zoom out, not just on your linen wrap or the scent of myrrh that still clings to your neck, but on your entire world. Because to truly understand how Nubian women slept, you need to understand what they believed about night itself. Night in ancient Nubia wasn't just a time of day, it was a realm, a transition space, a porous boundary between the living and the ancestral, the conscious and the mystical. To fall asleep was not merely to rest, it was to cross over. And with that belief came certain habits. Superstitions, if you like, rituals designed not just to aid sleep, but to protect it. First, the placement of the bed, or mat, or platform. Many Nubian homes, especially in the regions near the Nile, were aligned with celestial markers. The sleeping area might face away from the door to prevent spirits from entering easily, or it might be angled toward the east, welcoming the rising sun as a symbol of rebirth. Historians still argue whether these alignments were intentional spiritual decisions or just practical design quirks influenced by breeze and sunlight. Still, many women chose their sleeping spot with care, not too close to the hearth, not directly under a window slit, and definitely not at the exact threshold between indoor and outdoor space. Because, as oral tradition hinted, that's where the wandering ones passed through. Whether that meant ghosts, spirits, or just metaphorical unease, no one dared test it. Next, protective charms. You might have missed them in the dark, but they're there. Tucked into cracks in the wall, dangling from string above the sleeping mat, or hidden beneath the bed. Small carved figures made from wood or bone. Bits of ostrich shell. Knot charms made from dyed cord. A particularly lovely one shaped like an eye dangles from a palm thread just above your head. You wouldn't have noticed it unless the moonlight struck it exactly so. These charms weren't flashy. They weren't for decoration. They were quietly powerful. Women believed they could ward off bad dreams, curses, or even jealous thoughts. Some charms were crafted during childbirth, blessed by a midwife. Others were inherited from elders, their meanings half forgotten but never discarded. One fringe tidbit from the archaeological record. A handful of homes near the site of Kerma were found with charred reed bundles under their floors, possibly remnants of protective burning rituals meant to cleanse the space. The night, it seems, required a kind of spiritual insulation. Now back to you. You lie here, your body softening again, and wonder if you should whisper something. Many Nubian women did. a brief invocation before surrendering to sleep. Some prayed to household gods or ancestral spirits. Others simply muttered a blessing, "May I wake." It's as humble as it is profound. This mindset of sleep as crossing into another realm affected how women handled everything from their dreams to their posture. If a dream was troubling, it might be told aloud the next morning to release it. If it was good, it might be offered to the gods with thanks, sometimes marked with a gesture, a bit of incense, a splash of water, a whispered name. But not all dreams were trusted. There's evidence from Nubian oral histories that certain dreams were believed to be messages, not from gods, but from the dead. If you dreamed of a deceased family member, it might be seen as a warning or a request. You might wake with a task, visit a grave, offer food to a shrine, or speak with a sibling. Dreams were not idle playthings. They were, at times, burdens. Still, not all was mystical. Some women likely slept dreamless, practical sleep, the kind you fall into after a long day grinding grain, carrying water, caring for children. The kind where your limbs ache and your breath slows and nothing, absolutely nothing, can wake you. Yet even then, there was respect for the space between wakefulness and rest. It wasn't just sleep. It was sacred downtime, a reset, a silent ceremony performed without words. And now, as you slip deeper into the night, you feel something you can't quite name. Not fear, not awe, just quiet awareness. You are part of a lineage of women who have curled beneath woven wraps for centuries, breathing in oil and ash and jasmine, letting go of the day. Above you, the eye-shaped charm sways slightly. Whether by wind or something else, who's to say? You close your eyes, whisper nothing, and let yourself drift again, trusting the night to hold you. The hours pass, and the deep hush of night begins to soften. Somewhere far off, a donkey brays once, then falls silent. You don't wake completely, but something inside you stirs, not in alarm, in rhythm. Your body remembers the hour, even if your mind hasn't caught up yet. You roll gently to one side, the linen wrap sliding slightly along your hip. It's cooler now. The desert has exhaled all its heat. The fire outside has died down to soft, embered breath. And in this soft hour, before the sun rises, before the roosters clear their throats, comes another small miracle of Nubian life. The sharing of warmth. Because, let's face it, linen is breathable. Sometimes too breathable. In wealthier homes, women might have access to heavy woolen cloaks for winter months or thick reed mats laid over furs. But for most, warmth came not from materials, but from each other. Picture this: a grandmother, a mother, and a daughter all lying close together, shoulder to shoulder. There might be a toddler wedged sideways, one leg draped over someone else's hip. A newborn swaddled in softened cloth lies tucked into the crook of an aunt's arm. No one's really cold because no one sleeps alone. It wasn't just practical, it was bonding. There's something deeply human about the idea of shared warmth. You've felt it yourself in tents, cabins, childhood sleepovers. That quiet pulse of another person's breath near your own. In ancient Nubia, it was normal. Expected even. Beds weren't sacred individual thrones. They were communal, ever-shifting spaces of rest, noise, occasional elbow jabs, and comfort. Of course, this came with trade-offs. Someone always snored, someone always kicked, and someone, usually the youngest, always wet the mat. But these were shrugged off, dealt with gently, reset by morning. A child might be shifted mid-sleep to a woven basket lined with goat hide. A mat might be rolled aside and replaced. No fuss, no judgment. The night had its messiness. That was part of its rhythm. In some households, women who didn't have family of their own, widows, childless women, travelers, were folded into the night's warmth through tradition. A neighbor might invite them to sleep under her roof. A cousin might make room beside her on the mat. This wasn't just hospitality. It was safety. One lovely fringe detail from Nubian folklore tells of a woman who refused to sleep beside anyone out of pride. She was said to grow colder and colder each night until even her dreams left her. A spirit eventually appeared, draped her in warmth, and whispered, "Even fire needs another flame." A moral, of course, but a cozy one. And it wasn't just people that shared the sleeping space. Dogs, cats, even goats occasionally found their way inside. Not always invited, mind you, but tolerated. Dogs might curl near the feet. A goat might chew idly on a reed basket in the corner before falling asleep upright. The sounds of breathing at night weren't just human. They were domestic, animal, communal. A chorus of life at rest. You turn now, settling deeper into your mat, and notice, yes, that's someone's foot resting lightly against your calf. You don't mind. The contact is small, grounding. You don't need a weighted blanket. You have a cousin. This shared warmth wasn't constant all year, of course. In the hottest season, mats might be spaced apart. Families might even sleep outdoors, on rooftops, or near rivers, letting the wind do its work. But during the colder months, bodies drifted closer, not out of sentimentality, but out of design. To sleep together was to survive better. Historians still debate whether the positioning of sleepers followed strict rules. Some believe elders slept on the outer edges for protection, or that children always lay closest to a central figure, often the mother. Others think it was far more fluid. You found a space and filled it, like water in a bowl. There's something beautiful about that simplicity, isn't there? No apps, no routines curated by influencers, just proximity, warmth, trust. You hear a soft snore beside you. Not loud, but comforting. Somewhere else, someone coughs and rolls over. The scent of warm skin and lingering incense laces the room. And in this tiny world, woven mats, clay walls, bodies pressed gently together, you feel utterly safe. You're not covered in layers, you're covered in community. And that, as you drift once again towards sleep's deeper chamber, is enough. You awaken just enough to realize it's still not morning. That curious hour just before dawn has arrived. The one where the world feels suspended in a long, slow exhale. Time hasn't begun moving yet. You don't open your eyes, but you sense the shift. Your body registers it before your brain does. The fabric against your skin has gone damp in places, not uncomfortably so, but real. It's condensation from breath, from bodies, from the cool night air finally settling after the desert heat of the day. You're warm under your wrap, but the world beyond it is starting to stir with pre-dawn chill. Now comes something you might not have expected. You are no longer quite where you were. At some point during the night, someone moved. Maybe your cousin rolled over and nudged you an inch. Maybe your little sister sprawled sideways and slowly nudged your mat off center. Or maybe you turned yourself, unconsciously seeking a cooler patch of floor. Whatever the case, your body has drifted within the shared constellation of sleepers. This drifting was normal, expected even, in the quiet choreography of Nubian slumber. It was rarely commented on. No one woke up angry because someone's foot was in the wrong place. Nighttime was fluid. You moved as needed. The goal was comfort, not order. Now, let's talk about those mats beneath you. They weren't all the same. Some were tightly woven reeds, surprisingly firm but breathable. Others were layered with goat hide, offering softness and insulation. If your family was fortunate, there might even be a layer of padding made from tightly packed grass, sewn into linen or leather. Simple, yes, but effective. And here's an odd little fringe detail. In a few excavated homes, archaeologists found circular impressions in the clay floors beside sleeping areas. Theories range from these being foot-worn indentations from years of squatting to deliberate cool spots, pounded smooth to offer comfort during hotter seasons. Historians still argue whether these were utilitarian, symbolic, or simply accidents of habit. You turn over, your fingers brushing the edge of a smooth wooden object tucked near your mat. It's a headrest. Yes, you heard that right. While many Nubian women use simple cloth-wrapped bundles or mats to support their heads, some also used carved wooden or stone headrests, small, curved platforms that lifted the neck gently off the ground. At first, you'd think that sounds uncomfortable, but don't dismiss it too quickly. These headrests helped preserve elaborate hairstyles and kept the face lifted in heat-heavy rooms where breath and sweat clung to surfaces. Some of these objects were lovingly decorated, carved with geometric patterns or animal shapes. Others were passed down between generations. Using one wasn't necessarily a status symbol. It was more like using a really good pillow. If your neck liked it, you kept it. You try one now. It's cool to the touch, but warms quickly. Your head feels strangely elevated, yet supported. The absence of fabric lets your skin breathe, and your hair, perfectly preserved. Speaking of hair, remember the fragrant wraps braided earlier? They're still intact. The oil you massaged into your scalp before bed has dried a little, leaving a sheen along your temples. You reach up, fingers testing the tightness of your plaits. Secure, no frizz. Your grandmother would be proud. You glance, just barely, toward the wall across from you. Hanging there, you now notice, is a small strip of fabric, knotted with beads. You hadn't registered it last night, but it's there now in the low blue light of false dawn. A private charm, a memento, a reminder to someone long gone. You'll never know for sure, but it's been tied deliberately, intimately, by hands that wanted it remembered. And as the morning inches closer, your awareness deepens. You start to hear things again. The sigh of a neighbor stirring. The rasp of a sleeping goat shifting its hooves outside. The soft thud of a pot being moved near the hearth, likely by someone who's always up first. You don't rise yet, not now, because part of the beauty of sleep in ancient Nubia wasn't just the rituals before it, but the slow return from it. Waking wasn't abrupt. There were no blaring alarms, no vibrating phones. You woke gently, in layers. The world re-entered your senses one piece at a time. Light, sound, scent, texture, warmth. And maybe, if you were lucky, you drifted back down again for one more sliver of dream before the day truly began. You do that now, just for a moment. You feel your body surrender again, sinking into that well-worn mat. A cousin breathes beside you. The cool air kisses your face, and as your mind lets go once more, it carries with it the knowledge that you are safe, still held. The sun has not yet risen, but light is beginning to seep into the world. Faint and silver at first, slipping across the packed earth floor like a quiet guest. You're still lying down, not quite ready to wake, but there's something new now, something warm, something alive. Smell. Not perfume, not myrrh. This is something else entirely. Earthier, familiar. It's breakfast, or rather, the start of it. In ancient Nubia, the transition from sleep to wakefulness often began with food being prepared. Not eaten yet, but stirred, scooped, or set to simmer. You might hear the soft hiss of water poured into a pot, or the pop of damp wood catching flame. You probably smell grain warming, or lentils or fermented dough just starting to puff up. Someone in the household, maybe your mother, maybe a grandmother, has risen before everyone else to begin the quiet magic of feeding the day. You don't open your eyes yet, but you know what's coming. Now let's rewind just a little. What exactly was a typical Nubian breakfast? What did a woman, especially one who just spent the night wrapped in linen and scented in oils, eat upon waking? The answer, like everything, depends on the household's location, the season, and the river's temperament. But most mornings began with grain. Sorghum and millet were staples, often ground the night before. Remember that late-night grinding rhythm? And left to ferment slightly. This produced a sour porridge, a saida, which could be warmed with water, shaped by hand, and eaten with fingers. Sometimes, if there was more time or more hands to help, women would press the dough into flat cakes and cook them on hot stones, creating something like a thick, chewy pancake. You can almost taste it now, can't you? Slightly tangy, warm, soft in the middle. The kind of food that doesn't shock the body awake but coaxes it. Milk was also part of the equation, especially in homes with goats. A cup of warm goat's milk, sometimes flavored with honey or tamarind, might be the first thing to pass your lips in the new day. Sweet, yes, but also grounding. And here's where it gets charming. Some women like to eat in silence, sitting cross-legged with their food balanced in a shared clay dish. Others talked, low murmurs between bites. And some, still half asleep, would eat lying down, elbow propped, eyes barely open. There was no single script. If you were up and food was there, you ate. You didn't need a table. You just needed a pause. One delightful fringe tidbit, some sleeping wraps doubled as breakfast bibs. Women would sit up still wrapped from head to ankle and simply adjust the cloth over one shoulder before eating. Not a fashion statement, just a practical way to stay modest, warm, and neat while handling hot millet. And while most food preparation was done before full sunrise, it wasn't rushed. There was no honking traffic, no looming Zoom call. Just a slow return to wakefulness, paced by the rising sun and the clatter of wooden spoons. The morning meal wasn't just nourishment, it was a continuation of the night's quiet. In fact, many Nubian households considered the first hour after waking as part of the sleep ritual. You didn't speak loudly, you didn't sing. You greeted others with a nod, a whisper, maybe a soft touch to the arm. The volume of life would rise with the sun, but not before. Historians still argue whether this was custom, superstition, or just common sense in a land where early light was precious and silence was golden. But if you've ever padded barefoot into your kitchen at dawn and felt the hush of everything waiting, you know exactly how it felt. There's something sacred about those moments. The shared bowl, the communal silence, the steam rising in thin coils from the morning's first meal. And in Nubia, women, often the last to sleep and the first to rise, carried that sacredness in their hands. You turn now, reluctantly, your muscles stretch. Someone across the room yawns. A mat creaks. The household is stirring, yes, but softly. The night is still present in the corners. The oil lamp has been replaced with sunlight, but its echo remains. And as a bowl is passed to you, thick, warm, filled with porridge, you realize the transition from sleep to waking isn't abrupt. Not here. It's a slope, a curve, a slow unwinding from one kind of peace into another. You lift the bowl to your lips, the heat, the sourness, the weight of the morning. It all pulls you forward into the day, but gently, always gently. You finished your bowl now, licking the last of the warm millet from your fingers and set it aside. The mat beneath you is cool again where your body has shifted, and the room around you hums with soft sounds. Wood scraping wood, quiet chatter, the flutter of a linen cloth shaken out and hung near the doorway. But you're still not up. Because in ancient Nubia, even after waking, there was a moment of stillness, a kind of post-slumber grace period, a time not quite dedicated to sleep, not yet to chores, but a space for recalibration, a pause. And in that pause, women often turned to one particular ritual: hair. Yes, hair, because how you wrapped it, combed it, scented it, or braided it could take hours, or just a few minutes. But it always mattered. Let's rewind to your scalp. It's still scented from last night's moringa oil massage. Slightly slick, but not unpleasant. That oil served two purposes. It softened your strands while you slept, and it protected your scalp from dryness in the arid desert air. Clever, really. You reach up, fingers testing the tightness of your plaits or wrap. Are they still neat? Probably. But morning light reveals what the night smudged. A stray curl here, a slightly frayed end there. So begins the quiet, rhythmic business of grooming. If you're a young woman, you might handle this alone. You untie your scarf, shake out your braids, and begin the slow process of retwisting or rewrapping. But if you're not alone, then comes the intimacy. Two women might sit side by side, one working on the other's head. No talking, just the snap of thread, the swoosh of fingers parting hair, the occasional soft exhale. It wasn't just about looks. It was about bonding, about care. Even in silence, touch communicated everything. Hairstyles in ancient Nubia were not just aesthetic, they were social statements. A woman's braids might announce her marital status, her tribe, her age, her mood. Intricate side braids, beaded ends, center-parted coils. Each style had meaning. Fringe historical fact: some women dyed their braids with crushed henna or charcoal powder. Not bright, not flashy, just a subtle stain that darkened or brightened the strands, sometimes adding red or brown undertones. Historians still argue whether this was fashion-driven or symbolic. Either way, it shows that even the color of your sleep-pressed braid could hold a story. And let's not forget the tools. Your comb, if you had one, was likely made of wood or bone. Finely carved teeth for detangling, sometimes shaped like animals or geometric forms. Some women had combs tucked into sashes at all times, not unlike modern-day hairpins or clips. Others worked entirely with fingers, strong, patient fingers that knew the scalp like a familiar song. You move slowly now, maybe exchanging places with your sister or cousin. It's her turn to braid yours, or yours to rewrap hers. There's no mirror. You rely on muscle memory and instinct. And the wrapping, don't underestimate it. Linen strips were often used to cover the head, protect hairstyles, or signify modesty. Some wraps were plain, but others were dyed in soft hues: terracotta, saffron, indigo. The cloth might be tied simply or with an elaborate knot. Maybe today you choose the looped-over twist, or maybe the side tuck, depending on whether you're staying in or going to market. And yes, some women simply left their hair uncovered, especially among young girls or laborers. Hair flowed freely, sometimes with beads or bits of cowrie shell woven in. You can imagine them now, standing barefoot in the yard, shaking out the sleep from their strands. This slow, gentle grooming wasn't frivolous. It was preparation, not just for the day, but for being seen, for being known. And while modern life might rush you with alarms and mascara and ponytail holders, Nubian women took their time. A head was an identity, a lineage, a canvas. To touch it was to say, "I am here. I matter. Let me shape the day with care." One beautiful fringe detail. Some women whispered blessings as they braided. Short lines like, "May your path be steady," or "Let your tongue be wise today." Not for the gods necessarily, just for each other. You sit quietly now, your hair newly wrapped or freshly coiled, your scalp still tingling slightly from the pull of careful fingers. The world has brightened. The sky glows blue-gold through the window slit. Your body hums, not with fatigue but with readiness, peaceful, anchored. And with your hair complete, so is your return from the realm of dreams. You rise slowly now, stretch your arms overhead, and roll your shoulders back. The mat beneath you is already half folded, your wrap adjusted, and hair tied with care. The morning has arrived fully. But even as the day begins, remnants of the night remain in your body. The softness of your joints, the scent of oil on your skin, the imprint of communal sleep in the calm rhythm of your thoughts. The next rhythm? Movement. Small, habitual, purposeful movement. In ancient Nubia, mornings were not spent scrolling or gulping espresso. They were slow and embodied. A woman might begin her day with a small walk to the river, to the hearth, or simply around the yard of her compound, checking on animals or stretching limbs still tight from sleep. You join her now, stepping out into the light. The ground is firm and packed beneath your feet. The breeze is still cool but carries hints of heat that will arrive by midday. The world is in that lovely in-between state, when you're awake but not rushed, alert but not yet pulled in 10 directions. You might begin the day by rinsing your hands, your face, your feet. Water, still chilly from being drawn the night before, is ladled from a clay jar. A friend or cousin pours while you wash. No faucet, no soap with 20 ingredients. Just water flowing from one hand to another. It wakes you better than coffee ever could. And this washing is not just about cleanliness. It's about resetting, removing the spiritual weight of dreams, clearing the dust of sleep, preparing your body to face the gods, the family, and the sun. Some women whisper blessings as they rinse. "May my steps be light," or "Let my hands bring no harm." These are not commands to the divine. They are alignments, little internal nudges toward grace. And as you dry your face on the edge of your wrap, you begin the next phase of waking, choosing what to wear. You might think there's no difference between what Nubian women wore to sleep and what they wore during the day. And in some cases, you'd be right. A simple linen shift or draped wrap could serve both purposes. But just like today's switch from pajamas to real clothes, there was an important psychological moment where nightwear became daywear. or was replaced entirely. That transition could be as small as adding a sash or belt, or slipping on a more decorative wrap, one dyed in deeper indigo, or patterned with tiny dots made from pressed leaves. You might pull a necklace from a basket, a string of beads, cowrie shells, or a simple carved amulet, and place it over your newly groomed collarbone. And yes, some women simply adjusted what they already had on. A wrap tugged higher, a corner tucked more tightly under the arm, a fresh fold, a little extra oil rubbed into dry elbows. The change might be minimal, but the intention behind it was everything. Historians still argue whether women in ancient Nubia had clearly defined wardrobe categories, night clothes versus day clothes, or if their garments were more fluid, dictated by task and occasion. But evidence from textiles, murals, and burial sites shows one clear trend. They dressed deliberately and beautifully, even when life was simple. And if you were going to be outside that day, you might add jewelry, nothing flashy but symbolic, a bone pin, a copper bracelet, maybe a carved bead with protective symbols. Even the poorest women often had something, a keepsake from a grandmother, a gift from a sister, a tiny bit of color to carry their identity forward. One fascinating fringe fact: archaeologists have found charm belts buried with women in Nubian graves, strips of cloth with beads and shells sewn into them, sometimes worn around the waist or over the shoulder. Were they worn daily? Only for ritual? No one agrees. But they tell us this: even a working woman, walking to the fields at sunrise, wanted to feel seen. You now turn back inside. The mat is rolled. The cooking fire is awake. Children are laughing, already sticky with porridge. You step forward and, yes, there it is, your feet fall into the rhythm of the day. Light, confident, aligned. And yet, even as life speeds up, a part of you still floats in the calm of the night just past. The softness of communal sleep, the oil on your skin, the whispers, the scent of incense from a clay burner shaped like a frog. These memories don't vanish with the sun. They settle into you, quietly, like sediment in water, making you somehow more anchored. You were dressed in dreams last night. Now you dress for the day. The sun is climbing now, throwing golden light over the clay walls and low rooftops of your village. Shadows are crisp and narrow, stretching just long enough to remind you that morning won't last forever. The quiet hush of early hours has dissolved into the soft percussion of daily life. Brooms swishing, pots clinking, children giggling between chores. But you're still tethered to last night, aren't you? Just a little, because what women wore to sleep in ancient Nubia didn't begin or end with clothing. It was also about space, the actual place where sleep unfolded. The corners of the room, the floor beneath the mat, the objects surrounding your body while you rested. Let's step back inside for a moment. Back to that sleeping space now empty, but still scented with warmth and oil and ash. What was it really? In most Nubian homes, sleeping quarters weren't isolated bedrooms like in the modern world. They were multi-use spaces, rooms that served as sleeping areas by night and living, working, or eating spaces by day. A mat might be unrolled for sleep and rolled back up in the morning to make space for weaving, mending, or preparing food. You can see it clearly now. Your mat is already leaning against the wall. The clay bowl you used for porridge sits beside it. Your wrap has been readjusted into daytime form. But the energy of the space, the imprint of sleep, is still lingering. The floor is cooler here. The air still carries last night's incense. This multi-purpose room required design choices based on function, not luxury. Walls were often coated with smooth mud plaster, tinted with ochre or ash. Some had faint patterns, wavy lines or palm prints pressed in while the clay was still wet. Not just decoration, but daily beauty. A little nod to the idea that even sleep deserves art. One curious fringe detail: some Nubian homes contained what archaeologists call niches, small recessed shelves built into the walls. These were likely used to store oil, charms, combs, or amulets, anything precious or ritual-related. Think of them as ancient nightstands, a place to keep what mattered nearby while you drifted off. On one such shelf in your own space sits a small, carved figurine. You never touch it, but you always notice it. It's shaped like a hippo, rounded, serene, with a slight smile. It doesn't do anything. It doesn't need to. Its presence is enough. Now look up. Above the shelf, above your mat, the ceiling is low and woven with reeds or palm fronds, layered with mud for insulation. On hot nights, you might have slept on the roof, under the stars, using the same mat now tucked indoors. On cold nights, this ceiling kept in warmth. Clever, efficient, intimate. Historians still argue whether the sleeping corner in a Nubian house was fixed or rotated with seasons. Some believe that households rearranged themselves based on wind direction or sun angles, shifting mats and belongings to find the most restful position. Others think families had a fixed layout, passed down through generations, always keeping the head facing the same direction out of custom or spiritual belief. You wonder now, if you were to return here night after night, would your mat always be in this exact spot? Or would you drift slowly, season by season, toward a new corner, a different breeze? And what about sleeping outdoors? Oh yes, that happened too. During the hottest months, many women chose to sleep on rooftops, or in courtyards, under mosquito nets, or simply under the stars. You can picture it, lying on a woven mat beneath a black sky freckled with stars, listening to the low thrum of insects and the sigh of sleeping goats nearby. Your wrap in such cases might be thinner, lighter, tied looser at the waist to allow airflow. You might wrap your head more securely, both for warmth and privacy. And your charm? That would still be nearby, maybe tied to your wrist or pinned to the edge of your linen. And even in open air, the same routines persisted. Washing before bed, oiling the hair, murmuring the night's wish. Let me wake gently. That was the quiet refrain, no matter the roof or floor beneath you. You return indoors now, the memory of outdoor sleeping fading like mist. The space around you is being repurposed again, cushions stacked, tools brought out, the rhythm of the day intensifying. But you pause just a moment longer in the space where you slept, because what Nubian women wore to sleep wasn't just about garments. It was about what surrounded them. The room, the mat, the scent of oil in the air, the objects they trusted, the small architectures of peace they built each night with their own hands. Even as the day begins, that architecture remains, the warmth on the floor where your body lay, the hollow in the mat's surface, the slight scent of you, still there. It's a quiet legacy, but a lasting one. You're up right now, helping fold wraps and sweep away the fine dust the morning wind has carried inside. The house hums with quiet labor, but even as your hands move, your thoughts are still with the night, that precious sliver of time where the body surrendered and the spirit drifted. Because in ancient Nubia, sleep wasn't seen as wasteful or passive or dull. It was necessary, sacred even. And the way women moved in and out of it, the textures, the rituals, the beliefs, told you more about their culture than any inscription ever could. Let's talk about one more fascinating thread woven into their nightly habits: healing. Sleep in Nubian tradition wasn't just for rest. It was where recovery happened. Of the body, yes, but also the mind and soul. Women knew this, and they created little rituals to invite healing into their nighttime routines. You would have seen it last night had you been more alert. Your mother rubbing her knees with warmed oil before sleep. Or your grandmother tying a thin strip of cloth around her ankle, muttering that it would keep the pain out. These weren't random gestures. They were intentional acts of comfort, where sleep became medicine. One of the most common sleep preparations: herbal compresses, bundles of crushed leaves, maybe senna, acacia, or even henna wrapped in cloth, soaked in warm water, then pressed against sore joints or bellies. The scent alone was calming. But the heat, the pressure, the routine of it, that did something. You felt cared for. You felt stitched back together by the quiet. Historians still argue whether these compresses had strong medicinal value or were primarily symbolic. But that debate misses the point. The ritual was the cure. You were touched, tended to, noticed. You might also remember the stone your cousin placed beneath her mat. Smooth, oval, warm from the hearth. Not for superstition, she'd say, but for grounding. The weight of it soothed her. She claimed it kept away the headache dreams. Whether or not it worked didn't matter. The belief did. And yes, healing during sleep wasn't always physical. Some women used the night for emotional repair, too. Long talks before bed, whispered regrets, replayed arguments, a quiet prayer to an ancestor for forgiveness. These weren't always spoken aloud, but you felt them. The body curled tighter on the mat, the sigh a little heavier than usual, the way someone might wake with wet cheeks but a calmer expression. You remember one night, long ago, when your aunt wrapped you tightly after you'd had a nightmare. She didn't scold you. She didn't interpret the dream. She simply added an extra layer of cloth, pressed her forehead to yours, and said, "Let it stay behind you." That was enough. Because healing wasn't loud. It wasn't complicated. It happened in the space sleep created. Let's not forget the influence of sound either. In villages along the river, the distant rush of water was a lullaby. Frogs croaked. Crickets chirped. Some families even placed small clay bowls near sleeping mats, filled with water or oil, not for drinking, but to catch and echo sound. Soft clinks, bubbling, liquid whispers, like a poor woman's white noise machine, thousands of years ahead of its time. Fringe fact? Some Nubian lullabies were sung after the child had fallen asleep, not to lull them to rest, but to protect the dream. Soft, repetitive melodies, more hum than lyric, meant to keep bad spirits confused or at bay. It wasn't about the sleeper hearing it. It was about setting a tone for the dream realm. You consider now, what sounds did you sleep through last night? What sounds protected you? A low snore, the brushing of a wrap, the click of beads against pottery, maybe the steady rhythm of your own breath. That's the secret, really. Healing comes when you listen. You look around now. The morning has fully arrived. Children are outside. The hearth is glowing again. You've got a job to do today. Maybe grinding grain. Maybe fetching water. Maybe weaving cloth with your cousin under the fig tree. But last night's sleep left you restored, not just rested. There's a difference. Rest is fleeting. Restoration lingers. And that's what ancient Nubian women knew so well. that sleep could be its own kind of healing ceremony, stitched together from wraps and scent, oil and warmth, silence and shared space. So tonight, when sleep returns, and it will, you'll know what to do, how to wrap yourself in comfort, how to listen for the healing hum beneath the hush. You'll be ready to receive rest like a gift. By now, the sun is high. The light outside is no longer golden and gentle. It's sharp, white, and buzzing with the anticipation of midday heat. You're busy. The house is busy. Someone is pounding grain in a mortar. A chicken has found its way into the courtyard again. But even in the heat of daytime tasks, the echoes of sleep still thread themselves quietly through your day. You begin to notice them now, like little fingerprints left behind on the body. There's a faint crease on your arm from the way your wrap folded in the night. The scent of last night's oil still clings faintly to your collarbone. Your legs remember the mat's ridged texture. Your mind drifts, just for a moment, to the rhythm of shared breath in that quiet room before dawn. Because in Nubia, sleep wasn't a break from life, it was woven into it. Let's pause for a moment and focus on what sleep meant spiritually. In ancient Nubian belief systems, often closely intertwined with neighboring Egyptian and sub-Saharan African traditions, sleep was a place where the soul traveled, not permanently, of course, but nightly. The idea was that part of your being left the body and moved into other realms, dreamlands, spirit worlds, memory kingdoms. And what you wore to sleep? That mattered. A tightly wrapped linen cloth wasn't just about modesty or temperature. It was about containment, holding the body gently so the soul knew where to return. Like tying a ribbon around a scroll, you keep it safe, you signal its value, you mark it for retrieval. That's why your grandmother always said to rewrap your chest before sleep, not just for comfort, but to remind your soul where to land. Fringe detail? Some women even tied a tiny knot in their wrap before bed, a symbolic anchor for the soul. Not too tight, not showy, just a small twist of cloth over the navel or heart. Historians still argue whether this tradition was widespread or practiced in specific tribal groups. But oral histories hint at its meaning. Sleep wasn't just passive. It was participatory. You had to prepare for it like a voyage. And your wrap? That was your vessel. And if your soul wandered too far, well, that's where charms came in. Last night, hanging from your mat, was a tiny bead-strung pendant. Not expensive, not flashy, but purposeful. It might have been carved from shell or bone or river stone, etched with a symbol passed down through your family. A hand, a wave, a fish, a star. Something that meant return. You didn't touch it every night, but you felt it, its weight, its promise. One peculiar practice that appears in temple murals and burial goods? The sleep chant. A quiet verse repeated just before drifting off. Usually not aloud. Sometimes not even in words. Just a hum. A rhythm, something to signal to your spirit. This is where I rest. Find me here again in the morning. You can try it now, under your breath. It doesn't have to be perfect. A low sound, a syllable you like, your throat vibrating softly as your fingers brush the linen at your waist. There, that's the feeling. And while many of your day's thoughts are directed outward, toward harvests, children, heat, neighbors, this ritual is inward-facing. Sleep was your only solitude in a world filled with sound and duty and other people's elbows. Even now, as you walk toward the well, balancing a clay jar on your shoulder, you find your mind straying to tonight's bed. Will the mat be cooler tonight? Will your sister snore less? Will the oil you used last night be enough? Or will your scalp itch by moonrise? Because in Nubian life, tomorrow's sleep was prepared for all day long. The wrap you wear today, it will be shaken clean and folded at dusk, maybe even warmed on a stone near the fire before bed. The water you draw now, it might fill the bowl for your evening rinse. The charm you wear on your wrist, you'll tuck it under your mat later so no one steps on it while finding their place to lie down. Fringe fact: some women even kept a dedicated sleep comb, different from their daytime styling tool. Shorter teeth, smoother handle, used at night just once to smooth the day away. Because just as there were tools for harvest and tools for weaving, there were tools for rest. You return from the well now, water sloshing in your jar, arms damp from the effort. And still, your body is whispering about last night. The linen's grip, the warmth of your cousin's back against yours, the slow blooming of dreams that never fully faded with the sun. So yes, the day is here. But sleep, it's still stitched into your skin. The sun now sits directly overhead, casting short, sharp shadows across the courtyard. You can feel the heat soaking into the walls, into the very earth beneath your feet. It's the hour when the body slows down and shade becomes precious. When even the goats stop bleating and flop sideways under trees like overcooked bread loaves. And what do you do in this hour? You rest again. Yes, you just woke up a few hours ago. And yes, you've already drawn water, helped prepare food, maybe even done a little weaving. But now it's time for a custom as old as the river itself, the midday pause. In ancient Nubia, especially during the hottest months, women took time after the noon meal to nap, meditate, or simply lie still. It wasn't laziness, it was wisdom. The land demanded it. The sun made stillness not just reasonable, but sacred. So you find a shaded corner, maybe beneath a reed canopy or beside a clay wall that hasn't yet absorbed too much heat, and you lie down again. Not on your morning mat, but on a thinner woven cloth, draped over packed soil, or a smooth plank of wood. The wrap you wear during this time, it's lighter. Maybe it's the same linen you slept in the night before, still holding your scent. Or maybe it's one reserved just for this hour, less structured, less belted, meant for quick rest and quick return to action. You fold your arm beneath your head, your breath slows. Around you, other women have done the same. Older relatives, younger cousins, even toddlers toddling into laps and curling like cats. No one talks much. The heat discourages it. Instead, there's a shared stillness, a communal sigh that settles over the yard like invisible silk. Now here's a curious cultural note. Many women unwrap their heads for the midday rest. Not entirely, but partially, allowing the scalp to breathe, loosening hair from its morning constraints. This wasn't done at night, when preserving a hairstyle was key. But during the midday rest, practicality won. You let your hair puff, or fan, or fall. Fringe fact: archaeological fragments suggest that in some households, small fans made from woven palm or papyrus were used during these hours, not by servants, as romanticized later, but by women fanning themselves, each other, or the sleeping babies beside them. Not for comfort necessarily, but for ritual rhythm, a gentle sweep of air that reminded the body it was safe, soothed, home. You close your eyes now, your thoughts start to float, and suddenly you're somewhere between dreaming and remembering. You remember your aunt's laughter the night before when someone tripped over a sleeping dog. You remember the cool feel of oil poured into your hand at dusk. You remember the smell of last night's grain, nutty, sharp, almost alive. You remember how it felt to be wrapped so tightly you thought your bones might melt into the mat. And still, you do not move. Because this moment here in the shade is where sleep kisses the day again. Just for a moment. A light kiss. A reminder that even while awake, you can carry the softness of slumber with you. Historians still argue whether the Nubian midday rest was considered true sleep or just a social pause. There's no firm evidence, just quiet, cool shadows in old rooms. Worn-down corners of stone where bodies rested for centuries. We can't know for sure, but we do know this. It mattered. Even the body remembers. You stir slightly, rolling your ankle against the cloth, adjusting your wrap where it's tugged across your hip. Your fingers trace the edge of a bead sewn into the fabric. A charm, a signature, a secret. Because again, what women wore to sleep in ancient Nubia wasn't just about covering the body. It was about protecting the interior self. And that protection didn't end with the sunrise. It extended into moments like this, when the day burned hot and the only defense was stillness. Now someone beside you stirs. A child coughs. A pot clinks in the far corner. The nap is over, but the calm remains. You stretch your toes. Unfold yourself slowly. Shake out your wrap and retie it with practiced fingers. The rest has ended, but you are not the same. Your breath is deeper. Your body feels rebalanced. And as you rise to finish the afternoon's work, maybe grinding herbs, maybe stitching a basket, you carry the softness of sleep in your limbs, like a blessing folded beneath your skin. The shadows are growing long again. The clay beneath your feet has cooled just enough to walk barefoot. The sun's harsh white has softened into honeyed amber, and a breeze begins to stir. Lazy, sand-scented, and just barely strong enough to lift the edge of your wrap. This is the transition hour, from the blaze of day to the hush of evening. And for women in ancient Nubia, this time was not idle. It was filled with quiet preparation. Because before sleep could return, it had to be invited. And the invitation began at twilight. Right now, you're helping gather what's needed for dinner. Not a feast, something simple. Grains again, yes. A bit of lentil mash, maybe. Crushed herbs, flatbread. If the river was generous, perhaps fish. But even in this, the wrap you wear makes a subtle shift. You loosen it slightly at the shoulders, not to bare skin, but to relax the day's tightness. Your belt, once firm around your waist, is knotted more casually now. You're signaling something, not to others, but to your own body. The labor is ending. The soft hours are coming. As dinner is cooked, you move about the courtyard, brushing sand from mats, collecting the children's sleeping cloths, folding pieces of fabric for head wraps. The scent of smoke clings to everything, earthy and warm. Somewhere nearby, someone starts humming, an old tune with no lyrics anymore, just melody. You hum along. It helps. One delightful fringe detail: some Nubian women kept evening-only oils, not as expensive as the nighttime oils used before bed, but more fragrant than daytime ones. These were dabbed behind the ears or along the neck, part fragrance, part signal to the household. I'm entering my evening now. Historians still argue whether these oils had ceremonial meaning or were just a practical layer of self-care. Some point to inscriptions showing women offering perfume to Hathor or other local deities. Others say it was simply habit, like brushing your teeth or putting on fuzzy socks. Either way, the act created a boundary between the doing and the winding down. As food is eaten, conversation flows more slowly. You sit cross-legged near the fire. wrap adjusted over one shoulder, a few grains clinging stubbornly to your fingers. No one is in a hurry. No one reaches for second servings too quickly. The pace of life is tapering, and your mind, like the sky, is dimming into softer tones. You help clean up afterward, not because you must, but because this is the rhythm. Dishes rinsed with careful hands, leftovers tucked into lidded pots, water splashed against stone. And then it happens. The second wrap. This is a moment you always notice. The first wrap, the one you've worn since morning, is folded and set aside. It smells like sunlight and work. You won't sleep in it. Instead, you take a softer cloth from the stack. It's thinner, cooler. It's been aired all afternoon. You lift it and begin to fold yourself into it again, just like last night. Not rushed, not loose, not tight, just right. The first wrap carried you through your obligations. This one, it's for restoration. Some women preferred plain wraps for sleep, undyed, unadorned. Others insisted on a dash of beauty, even in solitude. A stitched border, a single colored thread. You choose your favorite. It's worn thin at the hem, and there's a bead missing from the edge, but it smells like you. It wraps like memory. As darkness deepens, oil lamps are lit again. Small, flickering, gentle things. Their light is golden and low, not made for work, but for winding down. You recognize the way the flame dances on clay walls. It's the same every night. Familiar. Calming, a rhythm older than language. You might use this last hour to comb your hair, just a few strokes. No conversation, just the sound of your comb's teeth through strands still scented from the morning's braiding. You check your charm, make sure it's tied securely or tucked under your pillow. Someone nearby begins a soft prayer, and you find yourself mouthing the words even if your lips barely move. Then slowly the house begins to settle. Children crawl onto mats. Wraps rustle. Someone yawns so deeply they sound like an old drum. A final clay pot is sealed. The courtyard cools to silence. And there you are, ready. Dressed not for labor, not for display, not for survival. Dressed for sleep. You lie down on your mat. It's a little cooler than you hoped, but the cloth quickly warms to your shape. Your wrap is smooth beneath your hands. You pull it a little tighter across your chest. You turn toward the wall, or maybe toward the fire, wherever the quiet is deepest. And in this moment, your wrap becomes more than cloth. It becomes a soft boundary between this world and the one you're about to enter. The fire has dimmed now to little more than a soft red glow, and the courtyard is blanketed in hush. Even the animals know it's time. A goat stirs but does not bleat. Somewhere beyond the clay walls, a hyena laughs in the distance, not close enough to cause fear, just a reminder that the world is wide and wild beyond your mat. And you're nearly gone, but not quite. Because the final preparations for sleep in ancient Nubia weren't just physical. They were psychological cues, too. Gentle, deliberate markers that told your body, it's time now. Go slow, go still. Let's start with breath. Many Nubian women practiced slow breathing before sleep, not as formal meditation, but as quiet custom. Inhale through the nose. Hold. Exhale gently through the mouth. Again and again. The rhythm mimicked the wind or the hush of reeds brushing together by the Nile. Over time, your pulse followed it. Your mind loosened its grip. You try it now. Slowly. Deeply. Your hands resting on your chest beneath the wrap, feeling it rise and fall. You are tucked in, even if no one does the tucking. And you are not alone. Mats line the room beside you, sisters, cousins, aunties, all wrapped in their own cloth, Heads turned in different directions, arms flung or folded, the occasional sigh, a shuffle, maybe a cough. But the general atmosphere? Unity, togetherness, communal sleep. In the modern world, we often think of sleep as private, personal. But here in ancient Nubia, sleep was something shared, not exposed, not vulnerable, but gently witnessed. The breath of others formed a kind of lullaby, reminding you that you were safe, watched over, woven into a collective rhythm. You remember now something your grandmother used to say. If you can hear her breathing, you are not alone. Sleep will find you faster. She was right, and while every woman wore her own version of a wrap to bed, some tied tighter, some looser, some pinned, some draped, the act of wrapping itself was universal. It mimicked the womb, some say, a return to enclosure, a promise of stillness. Fringe fact: archaeological remnants show evidence of small sleep amulets woven directly into the seams of linen cloth. Tiny bone pieces carved with simple symbols, not worn outside during the day, just at night. Private power, a whisper sewn into fabric. Historians still argue whether these amulets were used more by older women or mothers or girls reaching puberty. The truth is elusive, but the message is clear. Sleep had layers, not just physical, but protective, spiritual, even story-filled. And dreams, yes, dreams. Tonight, you might dream of water, fast-flowing, clear, loud, or of birds, soaring, circling, sometimes talking in languages you half understand. Or maybe a dream with someone long gone. They don't say much. They just sit beside you, shelling lentils, nodding, watching the fire grow low. You don't need to understand the dreams. Just wear your wrap. Just breathe. Just listen. The wind shifts. A baby stirs in her mother's arms. Someone shifts their leg, sending a small ripple of sound through the mat below you. And then, like water soaking into clay, you feel it, the weight of your day leaving your body, your shoulders dropping a little further, your breath evening out. You are no longer preparing for sleep. You are inside it. Your wrap holds you gently, not tight, not loose, but precisely how you need it, like the arms of the earth itself. And just before the last flicker of waking thought leaves your mind, you remember. This is how it has always been. A wrap, a mat, a breath, a hush, and then the night. Sleep holds you now, full and deep, like the Nile embracing its banks in flood season. The fire is ash. The moon has slipped behind the clouds. Even the stars seem to dim, as if unwilling to disturb the hush draped over your sleeping form. But though you sleep, the world doesn't vanish. It folds inward, slower, quieter, closer. You shift gently on the mat. Your wrap rustles like reeds in the wind, barely audible, but present. It stayed with you through the night, just as it did the night before, and the one before that. A simple rectangle of cloth, yes, but now it is so much more. A witness, a boundary, a second skin. For a few soft hours, it's protected you from the chill, from insects, from dreams that turn sharp at the edges. It has absorbed the scent of your sleep, warmed to your body, curled with you in the shape of safety. And even now, before the dawn, there's life in the stillness. A sister's arm flung across her eyes. A soft mutter from your cousin as she shifts beneath her own wrap. A baby sighing in her dreams. The room is not silent, but soundless in a way that only deep familiarity allows. Because communal sleep in ancient Nubia wasn't just practical. It was intimate geography. The shape of every breath, the curve of each elbow, the soft edges of sleepy song all formed a kind of nightly cartography, a map of belonging. And your rap? It told the story. Historians still debate whether these raps were standardized or wildly personal. But between scraps of dyed linen pulled from graves, paintings of women draped in quiet beauty, and the passed-down words of descendants, you begin to see the truth. Each woman's rap was a sentence in the poem of her life. Yours, tonight, might read, "I have worked, I have laughed, I have rested, I will rise again." The dreams that come now are cool and distant. You float over riverbanks, through fields of tall grass, into homes that smell of incense and roasted grain. No one speaks. No one needs to. The wrap around your body translates everything. Warmth equals safety. Weight equals love. You don't worry about tomorrow's heat, or tasks, or expectations, because tonight you are cloaked in peace. And in that soft, dark, something ancient awakens. Not violently, not loud, but like an old drumbeat remembered in the soles of your feet. A rhythm passed through hundreds of generations, sleeping together, wrapped in cloth, held by stars and silence. This, you realize, is not just how you sleep, it's how you belong. And when the morning comes, as it always does, you'll unwrap the cloth slowly, fold it with care, and place it aside. But for now, stay wrapped, stay still. Let your ancestors keep watch. Let the night hold you a little longer. Let this wrap, woven by hands like yours, thousands of years before, do what it was always meant to do. Let you rest. And now, with our journey nearly complete, let your breath soften. Let your body sink deeper into wherever you're lying, your bed, your couch, your safe little corner of the world. The ancient Nubians understood something we're just now remembering, that rest isn't earned. It's essential. That sleep isn't weakness. It's where we remember who we are. And that what we wear to sleep isn't just fabric, but a quiet expression of care, of identity, of love passed gently from hand to hand, cloth to skin, night to night. Let your mind drift now, gently, back to that courtyard under stars, back to the warm press of a woven mat, the faint smell of earth and ash, the murmur of a lullaby someone once sang, not to you, not even in your language, but meant for all of us just the same. The wrap around you doesn't have to be linen. It doesn't even have to be real. It can be a memory, a thought, a presence, but let it hold you now. There's nothing more to do. No task unfinished. No word unsaid. No place you need to be except exactly where you are. Breathe in and out. You are safe. You are resting. You are wrapped in a story older than words and softer than silk. And sleep? Sleep will find you any moment now.